Welcome back to the Yanzhou campaign. Last time we fought our final battles with the Cao clan, taking them on a hillside and finding victory, and then storming into the old capital of the empire, Luoyang, and capturing it. We also faced one of our own armies after it rebelled against us, which slightly set us back in our Qingzhou campaign, but we rapidly took 2 of their 3 settlements, and the Cao clan was destroyed at about the same time. As a new turn starts, we've got a new guy to add to our clan somewhere in the background under Hao Meng apparently. Bad news from the old Cao territory, got some rioting causing trouble over here for Song Xian. I thought I had enough public order to prevent it, but apparently I wasn't paying attention. Belief conflict continues to be the big issue. Slowly but surely we'll be able to solve that, but that is going to take a while. Although it's all happening in the background, so you needn't worry yourselves with that. We're going to finish off what remains of the Cao clan in the form of this army under Hao Meng, which is also being reinforced by some of my own troops. I think one of the many small groups of rebels that I mentioned last time was around there in the forests. Handily enough, they're all dead now. On the standoff with Qingzhou, I was getting ready to attack, but really we still don't have a good way of doing it. Because all the enemy armies are standing next to each other, we're always going to end up fighting an uphill battle. Not that such a thing would be impossible to win, but I was still waiting and just looking for something more strategic to do. I had this idea, which ultimately doesn't work. I decided to try and send some yellow turbans to lay siege to the city, thinking it would cut off some of the enemy's reinforcements, but there were even more enemies here than I thought. They had a small hidden group to the southwest of the city that tried to ambush the yellow turbans, but actually it was a foiled ambush, so that balance bar can be ignored. We can actually run right back away and get away with it. Not that losing the yellow turbans would really matter. So yes, didn't find my opening here, and the standoff is just going to continue. Although, spoiler, I will eventually actually go and do something there. It's not all just a red herring, the Qingzhou plot line. At the start of the next turn, we get some very interesting news that's going to stir things up quite a bit. We've got this mission to kill Yuan Shu, the faction leader of Huai Nan, our big ally to the south. Although if you take a look at the tooltips when I mouse over some of their stuff here, we'll see that they're not my allies anymore. It appears that along with this mission, we've just been scripted to be at war with them all of a sudden, and that's a pretty big problem because, as I've mentioned previously, Huai Nan is a really powerful faction. They've got tons of armies, and I've just moved quite a lot of the stuff I had here away to deal with Qingzhou. Although it's not the worst situation, a lot of the units that fought against the Liu clan are still hanging around, and I've built a new army at Xiapi, so we are ready to go to some extent. However, because I used to be allied to them, I actually immediately failed the mission. That means I can't even claim the 40,000 wushu if I do win the war. We've got the worst of both worlds. We're just suddenly at war with our old ally, and there's nothing to be gained from it. At least though, as I said, we do have some men around the place, so we can set up and try to mitigate the damage. One thing we have working in our favour is the river between our territories. There are lots of bridges that control access to our territory, so if we just hang around those bridges, we can stop things getting too out of hand in theory. In this case I didn't actually stand on the bridge because I wanted to fortify, paranoid that the enemy would come at us with multiple stacks. If you're fortified, they can't really all attack you at once. It gives you more time to counterattack and get your own armies into position. In other places I am going to stand on bridges and just have a defensive position, see if the enemy take the bait. The main priority is going to be to get the men that were fighting the Cao clan, or as many of them as I can, to come back over and reinforce that position. So we just need to stall against Huai Nan really for now. Now we are going to need stalling tactics because we're at quite a big disadvantage as the war starts. In the very first turn, 4 stacks come into our territory in 2 sets of 2 that are next to each other, so we can't attack them since we'll only be allowed to use 1 stack if we manually control things for our own offensive. Not very nice. Before we react to that, an opening appeared at Qingzhou's capital because I had moved my forces back a bit, thinking maybe the enemy would be drawn across the river to attack me in a field battle. But actually they fell back from their side of the bridge, so now I can lay siege to the city all of a sudden and then put another stack behind myself, so if they do sally and attack me, both of our armies will be able to fight there, although one under the AI's control, so it's not quite that good. Still doesn't really resolve things, because there are 2 stacks outside the city to the west that I'll have to contend with these other forces. I'm not going to do anything for now. I tried, in vain as usual, to hide this stack near the city, thinking it might tempt the enemy to attack me in that direction. Now I looked up in the diplomacy screen who Huai Nan was at war with, and it's just me and the Sun clan. I had thought for some reason that they'd be at war with everybody as a result of that scripted event, but maybe it just affects the player. We're really getting screwed over by this right now. So we're gonna have the full fury of Huai Nan coming at us, most likely anyway, because the Sun clan don't have a land border with Huai Nan, so they're unlikely to get invaded right away. Now let's start thinking about what we can actually do here. The first thing I wanted to try was moving this army that's outside of our city walls into the city walls at Chao, so that those 2 stacks getting close to it will have a hard time taking it. If we could fight a siege defense, the power amplification we'd get from the walls may allow us to take those enemies down, but we couldn't make it. I tested it with 1 unit and it looked like we weren't going to be able to run to the city. The next idea was to just pull everything I could from nearby places into the area, so that at least we've got some depth to our defense. But we saw there, I just moved a half stack with no general towards the front line, and the fact that I'm mentioning this should alert you to what's going to happen. If you remember what happened last episode, you might know what's going on with that. Now I realise we can do a offensive defensive strategy by running right to show Churn with one of our armies and besieging it. It depends how the AI is feeling, but with that set up, they may now turn back and not swarm all over the place with those 4 stacks and set up a load of sieges in our territory, so we may get our fight on the border yet without our territory being so violated. And the stack that was out in the open, I'm just going to move it to be near our other fortified stack, so that if a battle does start, at least we'll have both armies available. Now further to the east, I can actually go on the offensive, because the men I had defending this bridge near Huai Ling can walk right forwards into this other army that's just standing around. There's no particular impetus to bring it down, it's just that it being here is a threat. It can go to the east and go behind us via another bridge that we don't have the men to defend. It could go and besiege Guanling over there. So if we can beat these guys, it'll just make our life easier and reduce the enemy's options, although the enemy do have the advantage in this battle, plus they're defending, meaning they'll get to go up on a hill. They walked across in front of me near the start of the battle because they switched hills as I was getting close to them. I could have charged them right now, but I was hoping to fire my ballistas at them. Unfortunately their range wasn't enough. The enemy did get up on the hill, so I had to spend ages going up onto the hill myself to avoid approaching on a slope. As I was doing this, the enemy decided to attack with 1 unit of crossbows, a classic bad AI move, but then in a good AI move, they turned back once they actually saw my men. So I just liked the idea that if this had been a later Total War game, they would have really committed to attacking with just that 1 unit and sacrificed it, but earlier things tended to be a little bit more thought out by the AI, at least that's how it appears to be, and they decided to go back and not do that. Eventually the entire enemy army came over. I guess because I have these ballistas, the AI can smell that I have the ranged advantage overall and wants to press in against me. That's okay to start with, because their own skirmishing units will have a hard time fighting mine. Here I've got some cavalry just hanging around in bad formations on my right wing, and I ordered some of them to charge at the enemy's crossbowmen. I wasn't initially planning to attack them, I just wanted them to move, because if they're running about they're not firing back at my own crossbows. But the enemy reacted to this by attacking with their own cav, and now I have a really hard time getting back out of that engagement. I'm trying to run back behind my own spearmen so that the enemy cav will be drawn onto the spear wall, but it just doesn't work. This other unit of cav going out on the flank is going to have the same problem, because there are even more cavalry even further back in the enemy's formation who go to attack them. We see partial success at drawing the enemy onto the spears. They go and stand in front of them without really attacking very much. At least their infantry are dithering about. They're not attacking properly with the infantry because they're going side to side, meaning our archers are getting more value for money. Those cav who were stuck out there are now doomed, basically. They're attacked by an overwhelming number of enemy cav of the same quality, and it's on hard difficulty, giving the enemy the advantage in same type or same unit matchups. So we'll have to work pretty hard to get them out of there, and we don't really have the men. On the left, the enemy attacked me with some light cav, but Zhang Ba can get in with heavy cav to sort that out. And now in the centre, it's time to just go all in. The enemy have lots of archers out there and not many melee units, a Devon style build, so just running forwards will help us out quite a lot, since it will get those archers running backwards and not helping very much. We routed one or two of the melee units in the centre, and now we can turn back with a few of our men to clear things up on the left flank, where the enemy are concentrated right now and are gradually winning. Here on the right with those cav, things are just over. Our cav were killed before we could really get any of our men up there to support. But we did take out the enemy's captain at this point, and they don't have an actual officer, meaning their morale is now extra low, and everything just starts to rout. The battle will turn. In that case, the enemy were fighting to the death, so I needed to disengage in order to kill them more effectively, Sun Tzu style. We chased the enemy off the field, turning all of their skirmishing archers into routing archers. Once we've got the number we need, it's over, and it's a heroic victory. Very nice for Zhang Ba. He is one of our faction heroes like Gao Shun or Zhang Liao, so good for him to prove that name is worthy. The enemy lost 2,000 more men than we did, but our losses were concentrated in our cavalry, which does kind of reduce our offensive potential. Now we don't have many options for fighting other than just standing there and hoping things go okay, although that can be fine in many cases. I'm going to bring him over to the west here to try and support the attack on Shouchun. Couldn't get close enough this turn, but if we aren't counterattacked, next turn we'll be very much guaranteed to take the city and have a nice springboard to go on somewhere from there. Everything depends on what the enemy actually does, so let's take a look. As hoped, one of the enemy armies turns back and returns to Shouchun. Although then, counter to my expectations, it goes to attack Zhang Ba rather than the besieging force, and Zhang Ba is definitely the weaker of the two armies on our side. A lot of his infantry is just trash, and this enemy army is looking pretty decent. In this case, we're able to retreat, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And we're even going to be the beneficiary of the glitchedness of retreating, in that it retreats to somewhere that's nearby, but it doesn't matter how long the route is or whether it's even passable. So we actually retreat through the city of Shouchun in order to get to the other side of the river, and now that first enemy army can't attack us, but the enemy are lured over with another army. So we have successfully halved the momentum of that invasion, but now we are going to be forced to fight this battle with Zhang Ba. The enemy definitely have an advantage, but they don't have an officer this time, meaning we'll have better morale than they do. Plus, we have a hill on our side, so we can sit up there and, in theory, pelt them with our ballistas, but they weren't firing for some reason. I gave them the manual order to fire, it said they were in range, but then they started moving forward, so not quite sure what's going on. Maybe they don't have line of sight properly. I'm not sure what sort of angles they want to fire at. Overall, it's just not really happening with the ballistas, but as the enemy get close, our archers, with their range boosted by the hill, will be able to start putting some damage on the enemy. Their force does have a lot of skirmishing units itself, but I wasn't expecting them to try and leverage any skirmish advantage because we've sort of seen how the AI likes to act at this point. I'm already advancing with melee troops ready to receive a charge, and indeed they rush their cavalry up the hill. We just about catch that unit going around to our right. Some more are coming in towards the centre and we're almost ready for it. Our formations are messed up, but we can form up into the pike wall formation and start fighting those cav right down the centre. That looks good for us. And we'll just advance into the enemy's melee units. I've got this second line of melee troops, most of whom are trash yellow turbans, who are going to advance and just stand there as a reserve. They're not especially effective in combat unless we can get them around into the archers. They almost get around our left with some cav. We sort of catch them, and I counter with my own cav. I've got some light cav, and we've got Zhang Ba who's going to go over there to help, so that will drive the enemy's light cav there away. Now it's just a grind really, we're sort of committed, need to see what happens. Our light cav on our left get around and start going towards the enemy's archers along with some of the yellow turbans, and in the centre things go well because even though the enemy have numbers on their side, their lack of a commanding officer means we can defeat enemy units without really killing that many of them, especially if we're on the flanks. We break through on the left and can rush men down to attack the enemy's archers, and the archers too are going to be easy to rout. We see a few units start routing here at pretty much full strength. If you just make melee contact, they get spooked and start running, and even if you don't, they start running because of skirmishing, and very quickly things just turn around. Within the space of about 20 seconds, the entire enemy army is set to routing, and we're going to hit continue battle because we want to get to that sweet 85% killed mark. Need to tell the ballistas to stop firing wildly because they're probably going to hit our own men, and I wasn't sure they were actually doing anything anyway. It didn't look like they were killing enemies. Here we are, sometime later, we've got the numbers we need. It's another heroic victory for Zhang Ba. It's pretty much the same result we just got. We are still taking losses though, doing fight after fight like this. His army's starting to look pretty weak. Wanted to check here to see if the ballistas were actually getting any kills, and the verdict is not really. They're having virtually no impact other than potentially forcing the AI to attack us because they're scared of the range on those things. So there we go, we win the battle, but that's not the end of it. A third army is lured over, and it also goes for Zhang Ba. This is some decent AI. This is a good idea, hammering an army that's already been damaged even if it's won all these battles, because this time it looks like they really are going to have the advantage. They've got 4 officers this time and another full stack to attack our very depleted force, although the one saving grace is that their infantry is worse than in the previous 2 armies. They've got a few conscript units which are just easy to rout in general, so that's something we can use. Both sides are doing the same strategy as before. The enemy come at us with some archers, we're going to be shooting back with our own archers from above, and waiting for the enemy to then inevitably just push everything up the hill right into us. I wanted to use the ballistas to shoot the enemy general. It said we were in range again, but as I gave the order, our guys went onto movement mode, so I immediately cancelled the order, and they can continue just shooting randomly out there. Now the enemy are going for it. We need to catch their cav with our few surviving spearmen after the last fight, so our tiny little formations will try and block the enemy on both flanks. We aren't quite able to achieve this due to lack of numbers, and it's going to be the same deal with their infantry. We're charging in with mostly yellow turbans. That's not going to be very good, but it's better than nothing, and we are uphill. Some of the enemy's heavy cav have gotten around on our left, but Zhang Ba will be able to start fighting back along with our light cav, and now our ballistas are able to start sniping away at the enemy general at the back. There, some infantry are going to be charging right into the front of our archers. Luckily, it's not very good infantry, so our archers should be able to hold out for a while in melee. We need Zhang Ba to finish up with the enemy general here because he needs to get moving. He's taking his time, and the general's units kind of split over a few different fights there, making it hard to really rout them. Things are going well when it comes to sniping though. It looked like we were just killing 1 or 2 guys at a time, but here we get a really good hit that kills half the remaining unit at once. That's what we like to see. So yes, we'll keep sniping away and make sure he's easy to kill and go after him with Zhang Ba. That's the general objective. Our horse archers can go for an outflanking move on the right, and now Zhang Ba and a few light cav will just quit whatever's going on over there and start getting to work. We smash into the enemy's right. There are some swordsmen there, a nice juicy target for our heavy cavalry to go after. No immediate shattering rout or anything, but it's going to do some good damage. Our horse archers have kited some of the enemy's halberdiers onto them, so we'll just draw them away from the fight and save our archers a bit of stress. Most of our archers are now fighting in melee because we just don't have any melee troops left. They've all been taken out. But they're doing okay, they're holding their ground, they've got loads of upgrades and experience, so they're probably better than usual. And there we start to see some routing going on with Zhang Ba. Need to run away right now because the enemy are pushing in some peasant conscripts, which may actually do some damage to Zhang Ba's unit. Now I've got a couple of spearmen here who finished off that enemy general at the back and can press in to continue that fight, hopefully a little bit fresh with a bit of an advantage there. The sniping has almost taken out the enemy general at this point, but I'm not going to go for him quite yet because this is a critical moment. We can probably get a couple more units to rout if we just hit them from behind here, and somewhere we kill that first enemy general that went around to our left. Not quite sure where he was. The horse archers need to kite better because the spearmen are now fighting them, so we'll run away. That's all fine, and we'll go right behind the enemy army where they'll play a critical role in a second. And Zhang Ba does get the routes he was looking for. These low quality conscripts can be routed easily, so things are going to clear up. We're going to free up some infantry and start rebuilding our formation. Now the enemy general, having been almost sniped to death, started running away and ended up fighting in melee with my horse archers over there, so we've caught him, although horse archers can't do very well in that matchup against heavy cav, so we're still going to lose a whole load of men. We're not just going to kill him right away or anything. As for the rest of the fight, it's looking up now. Things are routing all over the place, and we can start charging forwards with the archers to drive the enemy's archers away and just broadly turn skirmishers into routs as usual. And here's the nail in the coffin for the enemy army. I ran away from their general with the horse archers. He pursued and then takes a volley of arrows, and that finally brings him down. Now the enemy's morale is going to be obliterated, and you can see they're already routing all over the place. They've lost tons of men, and we can actually conclude the battle with a victory. Don't even need to continue and do a rout phase because we already slaughtered most of the enemy army in the fighting. We lost half of our army at the same time. No heroic victory this time since we did take such significant casualties, but again over 2,000 enemies dispatched, and there goes the execute to make it final. A couple of officers get away, but overall that's pretty good. That's the third stack taken out by Zhang Ba this turn. Now after all that, at last we see the thing that I thought was going to happen occur. Huai Nan pull together some forces and come to break the siege at Shouchun. Annoyingly, they've got a stack behind me. What I really wanted was to just be attacked from the south, because I'm standing on a bridge, meaning I could get a nice advantageous battle, and one that would actually include Yanzhou, the enemy faction leader. But because they've got a full stack behind me, we'd have to fight both ways on the bridge, and it wouldn't really work, and we just have a general disadvantage. With all that in mind, I thought, well, we don't really need this siege anyway, so we'll just call off the siege and see what we can do next turn. I then immediately regretted making this decision because yet another Huai Nan stack appears from somewhere, charges across the bridge that I just gave to the enemy, and again goes after Zhang Ba. So things are still looking pretty bad. Despite this string of victories, there's still like 5 or 6 stacks of enemy stuff on our border, some of them in our territory, and now Zhang Ba, with pretty much nothing left, especially when it comes to melee troops, has to face another battle, the hardest of all of them so far. We'll see how that goes next time.